Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're sitting. I'm happy to have you join today's Welcome Change conversation, which, as hopefully most of you know, is part of our ongoing series at Ashoka about what's working and what's next. I've been looking forward to today's conversation, not only in my role at Ashoka, where I'm always eager to learn about areas that I don't necessarily know a lot about, but also as a parent of two children with a growing awareness of the digital world that they have yet to venture into. Our fellow today is Yuhyun Park, who lives in Singapore, whose work is global in nature. She's the founder of the DQ Institute, which is dedicated to setting global standards for digital intelligence that ensure safety, empowerment, and the well-being of both individuals, but also organizations and nations in what they call the digital age. I'm Michael Zakaris. I'm the director of Ashoka's programs in the United States. I've done, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 of these conversations now. So hopefully some of you have seen me before. But as always, you kind of know the drill. We'll do this in 30 minutes. And hopefully if there's interest, we'll open it up to some questions from people who are listening near the end. It's easy to submit a question. Just use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen in Zoom. And we'll also share a recording of this conversation in the next few days. So, Yuhyun, welcome Change. It's good to have you here with us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining our conversations. Yes.
So I wanted to start. I was refreshing myself with your work and your idea, and looking at your bio yesterday evening, and in addition to being an accomplished social entrepreneur, I noted that you have a PhD in what was called computational biology. And so I was just curious, before we get into DQ, tell me what that is, because when I hear those two words together, I don't necessarily think of them merging as computational biology, but I'd love to hear.
Well, actually, my PhD was in biostatistics,
Okay,
and one part, yeah, biostatistics, and then the one area of biostatistics is a computational biology. So I started from my undergrad as a statistics and applied mathematics. So, and then I did the PhD in bioinformatics. So that was a time that the crack ventures and human genome projects has started in the US, and everybody start rushing into the DNA sequencing and more. So biostatistics became quite a big boom among the statistics and the mathematicians. So I was one of them. And at the time, I was developing the methodology, mathematical methodology on the big data. Now, everybody call it the AI, but I am old enough to call it as a high dimensional statistics and data. So that was how I started my career. Yes.
Got it. Okay, so AI
Yeah.
before it was AI. You were earlier.
Yes. Well, it is AI. AI was AI. AI was born way before I did the PhD. The concept, but at that time it was not at a high peak.
Got it.
So the things that you learn about, the deep, what is it, machine learnings and all this different technology. Yes, that's the area that I worked. Yes.
Okay, got it. Well, thank you. So as I mentioned, you've gone on to found the DQ Institute, which you did more than a decade ago, and one of your significant contributions has been to develop this idea of what you call DQ in the first place, like IQ, and so DQ is a kind of digital literacy. Tell us a little bit more about what it is, and why it's so important in the digital age in 2024.
Sure. When I started the DQ, I started as an NGO in Korea, 2009. And my starting point was actually online child protection. So after my PhD, I joined Boston Consulting Group as a management consultant. At the same time, the area that I worked on was media and technology. And I worked in Silicon Valley back then. And what happened in Korea was there were horrible incidents. The 8 years old girl was raped by a child fanatic. at 8 a.m. in the morning. And it was a very brutal rape. And I became a mom at the time. So I was, it upset everyone in Korea if you have a kid. So I was reading after reading about this story. I was following up from the US through online news. And what I saw was that in the top, it was a story about this girl. And then in bottom, I saw the semi-porn advertisement featuring 16 years old girl. So it was not like um, a weird website. It was one of the major websites. So since I was working as a business consultant and media specialist, uh, and that was 2007 and 8, where, whole industry went into the digitalizations and, Web 2 was starting at the time. And what I realized that it was not really coincidence to have these two images, two news is like coming together. There's a business logic behind it. So that's why I actually thought about that. Okay, this is something that we have to work together. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really, really become a big problem for kids. So the way I started was not really about any motivation. It was just because of I was mom and I wanted to do something about it. And I was a knowledge worker. I'm still a knowledge worker. What do? We write a proposal, right? So I wrote a proposal about the infolution zero, so information pollution zero. So what the thesis was, just like pollution destroy the earthly nature, the information pollution can destroy our mental, our soul, especially the young one. So that was a starting point of my journey of not-for-profit life. And then while I was working on that, I realized that it is very difficult problem to solve. The reason is that digitizations go so fast. And then now even whole education are moving toward to the digital. Everybody say, you need to learn coding to, to be successful and so on. And then there's a two contradictory issue is going on. Some people are afraid of cyber risk, but some people at the same time, the same group of people are concerned if my kids do not have a digital skills or digital literacy, whatever you call, they cannot be successful in their future. So while I was working on that, I realized that it should not be just about advocacy or policy work. It should be education work. So when I moved to Singapore, I worked with the various scholars and I developed the concept of digital intelligence, not just about the digital skills or digital literacy and more. I thought that it has to be positioned as a new intelligence in the new world, whatever you call, fourth industrial revolution or AI age or whatever you call. So just like IQ was born after first and second industrial revolution, just like EQ was born after third industrial revolution, we need a new intelligence. When we say this is a fourth industrial revolution, when AI is taking over everything. So that's where I came from. So DQ has to be comprehensive concept, just beyond just digital literacy or digital skills, whatever you call it. And it has to be positioned as a bigger concept that actually encompasses about the people who can live in digital life safely, responsibly, ethically, should be included as a part of whole intelligence. And then when they know how to live online, they can be creative and they can innovate. So that's a different part of digital skills. So I made this a structure. So that's what we call the digital intelligence. So that's where it comes from.
Fascinating. And can you give us an example? I mean, you've given us kind of the broad strokes, but tell us a little bit more. Give us an example that helps that bring it to life. So what does digital intelligence looks like, either as a comparison point of what a not especially intelligent move or reaction might be versus an intelligent one, or as distinct from just digital skills? Help us understand it.
So because when we are talking in this broader concept, it is a bit difficult to grasp. So if we are going to talk about child online safety, we can restrict our conversation into digital citizenship, how we define. So the digital intelligence is that the whole architecture of knowledge. So for instance, if I'm asking you, what is mathematics? Then people, like, everybody know this is mathematics, but if you are asking someone, please describe mathematics, not many people can describe, right? So there's a lots of within the mathematics, there's a lots of school of knowledge is over there, right? Calculus, linear algebra, or whatever, right? But everybody know it should start from 1+1, right? Just like that, there's within digital intelligence, there's a AI skills, there's AI literacy or data science, whatever. But we want to ensure everybody to start with digital citizenship, which means that you know how to use the technology media in safe, responsible, and ethical way. So that's why I developed the whole concept of digital intelligence to ensure every country, every industry should start digital skills or digital literacy, AI literacy, whatever they call this education with the digital citizenship. Then what is this digital citizenship? Is that we actually look at all 8 dimensions of the human life. So a lot of time when we think about digital literacy, it's just one part of the equation because that's people use a language differently and interchangeably, but largely wise, what we want to ensure digital citizenship is that when we go onto online, right? When we go into the digital world, we want to be also a citizen over there. Citizen means that every part of your human life in digital realm. So you know how to control your digital identity. You know how to use your device and your media responsibly. Do you know how to use technology safely, securely, and with emotional intelligence, with the knowledge, which is about the media literacy, and also you understand human right in the digital age. So we actually look at all 8 dimensions of human life in the digital world. So that's what we call digital citizenship. So that's the basic 101.
Yeah, that's, I mean, 8 dimensions is a lot. So it's obviously it's you're taking something that we made, as you say, there's kind of a narrow slice of it, and then you've expanded it in a way that's much more comprehensive. And I think it's fascinating to think about, bringing our full sort of citizen selves into the digital world, because so often I feel like people bring some small portion of themselves, and there's often an anonymous aspect to it, which makes this, of course, very challenging. So many directions we could go, but one of the things you've done is you've named this terminology, this more expansive terminology, and then you've developed and kind of set some global standards for what you think digital intelligence should look like, including the Child Online Safety Index. So I'm curious. I mean, you can tell us a little bit more about the substance of those standards, but also I'm especially interested in how you get them adopted. What do you do with them, right? Because it's that in some ways that's the difference between, anyone can set some standards, right? They can live somewhere, they can be very academic, but then actually getting people to pay attention and acting on them feels like the real challenge.
Sure. Um, I I can boast anything about my credit on the setting the standard because I was just part of the journey. I worked also. I was selected as a young global leaders by the World Economic Forum in 2015, and then I got involved with the WEF in quite a working level as well because there also was interested into finding a new paradigm for the educations and the intelligence in this fourth industrial revolution, because fourth industrial revolution concept was born around the 2015 and 16. So it was a very good timing, as I was quite lucky. And then when we presented about DQ, they're also very excited. So I published the DQ not in academic journal, I publish it at the World Economic Forum. My purpose is that I do not want to live in the small world of academics. I wanted to actually make sure that this DQ can be used by the practitioner. So it actually picked up by a lot of international organizations and governments and company and so on. But more importantly, in 2017, I got a call from IEEE, which is a standard associations. So it's like an ISO, IEEE are one of the two biggest standard setters internationally. So they were looking to set up the international standard for digital skills for industry.
Mm.
It's interesting, right? So they look at the more than 100 literatures and frameworks at the time over there. And then they call me and say they like DQ most because they found it is most comprehensive. So they wanted to make this into global standard. So I was quite surprised because I made it for kids. And then they wanted to use it for the industry. So I say, wow, that's very exciting, but that is a half of the equation. Let me bring OECD because at that time I was working as a future education expert in OECD, that was the starting point. I was one of the starting points member for OECD Future Learning Frameworks 2030. So I brought the OECD together, and WEF say we are the mediator. So, so four entities, OECD, WEF, and IEEE, and us, DQ Institute, has started the coalition called Coalition for Digital Intelligence. And our purpose was that we wanted to create a common language that can be used for not just about the children educations, but also at the same time of lifelong learning and then digital skills in industry setting. So that's how we started. And then it took us about 3 years. In 2020, it became the standard by IEEE. And since then, it has been used and referenced by more than 100 countries.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's such a having your foot in the door of not one but several large institutions certainly helped, right? And I think that's such an effective way that we see Ashoka Fellows getting ideas that are really creative out into the world quickly is sort of leveraging the reach. And as you said, maybe a little bit of luck on timing, but you're probably being particularly humble, as most fellows are too. You referenced this earlier up front, just how fast the sort of digital world is evolving. And so I'm just curious about some of the challenges to be taking on a problem like this that is not just global, but it's constantly getting ahead of us and maintaining standards when it feels like by the time the ink has dried on a standards, there may be other dimensions of this that have emerged.
Yes, that's very true. But at the same time, that is not necessarily true. The reason being is that the biggest challenge about setting the standard on the fast moving the sector and industry is that we have to keep it both together. But at the same time, we need to have very fundamental structure that is not going to be changed. So one of the benefit that we developed the whole structure is that as I described this human life of an 8 different dimension is like identity, safety, use, and right, and all these different part is yes, it's not going to change even if inside what's going to the skills and what are the things that we need to do is going to be changed, but big structure will not change. And also the way we structure about the 3 levels. So the first is about citizenship. We know how to live. And second is about creativity. We know after you know how to live, you know how to create. And third is competitiveness. Is about when you know how to create, you want to be creating the impact socially, economically, in every dimension. So when we have the broad umbrella helicopter view about how we define about this architecture of our being and capability, and then within that we are going to constantly evolve. So having this big mindset is framework is actually very helpful. But my frustration is about that because a lot of education and policymakers do not understand the speed of change in the industry. So luckily, my background was even though it was an academic, and I was trained also as a in the industry. And for me, it is thanks to my background, I have a better in position to understand what's going on inside and what's going on inside mind of the technologist. So when I see the gap between this, where the technology is heading toward to, at the same time, how the policymakers make a decision, how the education system has to evolve. There's such a huge chasm and a huge speed gap. This is rather frustration rather than keeping this. Keeping this is rather easy. How to bridge this too is a frustrating part.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. So a lot of people would look at this problem and especially what you shared at the top, the experience and the story of the 8-year-old in Korea, and think, we need new laws and regulations, right? And in fact, in the U.S. Senate just yesterday, they're considering and debating 2 online safety bills, and you might have thoughts about those in particular, but you're starting with young people themselves. I mean, so with children under 10 to help them to develop these responsible digital habits. Tell us why that's the focus area, and also why so young, why under 10?
So first of all, congratulations on,
Oh,
on COSA. We called it COSA, right? This the Child Online Safety Act and COPA 2.0. No matter what newspaper says, how far that went I was surprised because I was like, will it get through US Senate? And when I saw the news yesterday and today, I was very excited. But anyhow, um, the reason I started under young is because of my kids. Like I was so frustrated talking with adults and say, oh my goodness, no matter what I say, they're not going to listen anyway. So it's like, oh, why do I waste my time? Let's focus on kids and let's focus on my kids as well. So I developed this whole digital citizenship for young children just because I want to teach my kids. And that was a starting point. And then more and more I learned about this, I found that I actually frame as 8 to 12 years old is a golden time to age. Is a golden time to rescue. And I'm very thankful this concept has actually resonated with so many core peer the NGO, at the same time, a lot of policymakers. Because before we started this movement, we called it DQ Every Child. A lot of focus was very narrow, this bullying, bad kids, addiction, bad kids, and usually that kids is about teenagers.
mm,
But what I actually focus is that no, if you want to influence kids, and if you want to influence the children's online behavior, it's like a tobacco, right? I'm sorry to compare social media addiction with tobacco, but it's actually behavioral issue and a cognitive issue when 8 to 10 to 12 years old is the best time to intervene. So if you look at the tobacco education, it starts from 8, right? So that's the best time for them to develop the social norm and this normality about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. So having that age group is very, very important.
mm.
And even though I started out because of my kids, the more and more I research about it, this is a very important time to capture. So after that, I've been pushing whenever I work with the government to install the digital citizenship education, whatever that name can be, cyber well-being or whatever, has to start from that age group. Yeah.
And what you call digital parenting, it's not just about control, right, over kids and techs and teens tech use, but you talk about empowering them to be good digital citizens, who can minimize risks, who can maximize potential.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about the distinctions there between what that approach is, where we're not just sort of setting barriers and rules all the time, but we're actually trying
Mhm.
to cultivate digital citizens.
Sure. So there's a lots of different parenting skills. Just like what we do in offline, in online, there's a different type of the digital parenting. But when you're young, when your kids are young, like if your kids are 4 years old, 3 years old, it has to be restrictive parenting. It has to be don't do, don't do, right? So that means like set the strict guideline about what's acceptable, what is not acceptable as a parent. A lot of times, like parents try to be becomes too friendly and becomes a too friend, and then to their kids. But uh, well, I'm an Asian. I'm an Asian mom, so please bear that with me. Whoever who disagree with me about parenting aspect, yes, let's not talk about it. But but there's a restrictive parenting which can be very effective when, especially when children are young. But when the children become the getting older, and then they actually, like if they pass like 10 years old, the 12 years old, when they becomes a teenager, it's very important to help them to understand and talk with we called it active mediations. Help them to nurture about the critical reasoning and critical thinking, to understand the consequence of their behavior is can be resonate it can manifest it by their online behavior. What are the things that can happen offline? They have to learn. So parenting over there has to be advanced, and it has to be advanced more than offline parenting, because offline parenting and online parenting is not very different, but parents have to understand the nature of the digital, how they're different from offline, so they can help most effectively about their children's digital life. Yes.
Fascinating. Yeah, and good lessons for me with a parent of a 4 and a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on time, which is, it always goes by too fast. But I'm curious now, sort of looking forward. Um, Give us just a little preview of next directions, or where you think change is going to happen or change might be possible in the next 3 to 5 years.
Um, how politically correct do you want me to say? Do you
You
want
don't,
me to be?
you can be direct. If people have stayed this long, they deserve direct. Yeah.
I'm not very optimistic. Um, uh, but at the same time, I think we have to really work together. My actual concern is not because of speed of change or anything. It's because we have so many different issues, and when we are not putting the priority on our children's their benefit and their growth and their well-being, sometimes we fall into the very unnecessary discussion. That's what I've been observed in many tables that I was sitting in. So my actually biggest actually focus this day. So rather than predict the future, I can share about what I'm focusing on. I think digital literacy and digital skills are so important, and which has been like there's a disparity between global south and global north, but in terms of the resources and access and a lot of things. So my current focus is how can we overcome this speed gap by democratizing this digital skill, leveraging AI and all other technologies that we have. So that's my current focus. So let's actually, as they are moving fast, we need to move fast, and then we can do it. And then I think that requires for us to really focus, narrow the laser focus of what's really most important for you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, as you say, it's a big challenge. It's good for us and all of us listening, and those who will listen to this later, just to learn about your work, and makes us all more effective at addressing this challenge, right? Because this is one of these that we all have a role to play, right? As parents, as citizens, as young people, as digital change makers. So thank you again for taking this time with us. Really good to to meet you digitally, and yeah, look forward to continue following your work.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And have a good night for everyone, and have a good starting of day to some of you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.